Hi there, my name is Ash and I like to draw. But do you know what else No, wait, that doesn't work for this video. If you're an artist who posts their work on social media, you sometimes run into fun and interesting viral art challenges. Like maybe there's a screenshot from a popular show that everyone starts to redraw. There's stuff like Inktober, where you draw a different ink drawing every day of October, Mermaid, where you spend all of May drawing different kinds of mermaids, Kaijun, you name it. But then there are the ones not based on a month or a specific meme, but simply on letting your audience pick what to draw for you. Such as the 6 fan art challenge, for example. I almost never participate in these. Not because I don't want to, but because I either plain forget about them or I don't even notice they exist until everyone is already sick of it. But I figured I should try at least one anyway. So I picked up an art meme that still pops up sporadically online. The color wheel. The premise is simple. The wheel is split up in 8 panels, each of which is of a specific color, and the artist's followers, or the artists themselves, then pick a character to represent each one. So I figured I'd let my followers on Twitch and BlueSky chime in and suggest some characters, and thank you very much to everyone who did. You quite literally made this video, and you gave me some very fun suggestions. But which ones made the cut, do you ask? Well, why don't you sit your butt down and find out? Going from the top, the first suggestion for Orange was none other than the quintessential anime protagonist, Son Goku. Oh, where would I be without Dragon Ball? It was what introduced me to the idea of manga and anime. It showed me that stories can range in mood from funny to serious mid-page without losing the reader's attention. And it was one of the first times I saw characters grow and age in meaningful ways. So you can go ahead and make all the charging for 20 episodes jokes you want. There's no denying the effect that Dragon Ball had on not just manga and anime, but on creatives all over the world, and I owe so much of my media landscape to Akira Toriyama. So yeah, starting this off by drawing Goku seems just perfect. I did, however, decide to do something a little bit different than what was suggested and drew Kid Goku instead, because I want us all to remember that this is where it started, with a little gag comic about a super strong boy with a tail. And I feel like too many people in the West dismiss or forget about Dragon Ball Classic. As much as I love seeing folks throw around energy blasts that can level cities, there was a time where seeing a character flying was a big deal. Where every new fighting technique revealed on the page was like opening the first Christmas present of the year. Some of my favorite moments in the entire franchise still lead all the way back to the humble beginnings. And that's why the little boy living in the mountains gets the first spot on our color wheel. Now granted, this isn't the most interesting pose I could have come up with, but I just wanted a smiley, happy little Goku to greet you welcome to the color wheel. And I mean, hey, this color wheel is gonna get weird really quickly. Because our next candidate is none other than the pointy, snarky little chaos god himself, Bill Cipher. Gravity Falls really was something special when it came out, but it can be hard to define why. It's not like it was the first cartoon to have a more complicated, mysterious story underneath a fun and goofy-looking facade or anything. But the show's run just led to such wonderful camaraderie among the fans who were all trying to decipher all the hints and clues to see where the story went next. Plus it had a cast of wonderful characters and a willingness to take its weirdness to truly hilarious and dark places. And look, I know it's a bit of a cliche to praise a cartoon whenever it gets ever so slightly scarier or more intense than usual, but Gravity Falls really threw some horror show stuff at you, leading to some insanely chaotic imagery. Not the least of which is due to its antagonist, Bill Cipher, an extra-dimensional being who wants nothing more than to shatter all that is orderly and coherent about the world, simply because it amuses him to do so. When it comes to character design, you sometimes talk about things like a strong silhouette and shape language. And in those terms, Bill is kinda brilliant. He's literally just a triangle broken up by some noodly limbs and his tall, narrow top hat. There's no other character in the whole show that looks remotely like him, and it really makes him stand out. It also makes him mercilessly simple to draw. For the most part, you're simply drawing a completely normal pyramid while making sure to add the giant Eye of Providence. That is the eye seen on the $1 bill, see how that works with his name, which has become synonymous with the concept of the Illuminati. A secret organization that supposedly watches us all and pulls the strings of all governments in the world. You see? Even the simplest character designs often have a lot more thought behind them than you think. I do find it important to remember to add a few foundational bricks to his design and to give him at least a little bit of depth rather than just keeping him a wholly two-dimensional triangle. Because as much as he likes to imagine himself as a ringmaster of chaos that's way beyond our comprehension, he is still a living physical creature. He is still bound by law, by logic, by rules, even if those rules differ wildly from our own. And refusing to accept that is what leads to his ultimate downfall. Okay, that got a little bit wordy there at the end, so how about we just lean back, sit down on a lily pad, bring out the banjo, and sing a song or two about rainbows for a while? Because our candidate for green is none other than Kermit the Frog. What exactly is it about the Muppets that makes them so darn enduring? Well, if you ask me, the answer is charm, pure and simple. The Muppets have no illusion of grandeur. They don't exist to tell thought-provoking stories or to rock anyone's boat. They just exist to be goofy, fun creatures who celebrate the world of song, dance, and performance, and the positive influence it has on us. They might just be a silly gaggle of frogs, pigs, bears, and whatevers, and their idea of entertainment may be odd, but all they really want is to put smiles on faces for a few minutes at a time. And sometimes that's more than enough. And of course, in the center of it all, we have Kermit the Frog, the character that may not have started Jim Henson's journey through puppetry, but certainly ended up defining it. Kermit is a simple frog. He's not as chaotic and wild as most of his co-stars, and he spends an awful lot of time trying to wrangle them and get them to perform together in a way that makes at least a little bit of sense. Something that stresses him out to no end. But still, whenever he gets a chance to pull out his banjo and sing a little song, he performs some kind of magic that makes you just sit and listen for a minute and forget whatever else is bothering you. That opening shot from the first Muppet movie of him just sitting on a lily pad singing a song to himself, that is the one moment that perfectly defines Kermit to me. So of course I had to draw him with this good old banjo, no doubt in the middle of singing Rainbow Connection or something. Drawing people playing instruments is already hard, and Kermit is actually a little tougher to nail than you'd think, especially if you still want him to look at least somewhat like a puppet. So you can probably see me struggling with arm placement and such a few times during this drawing. But still, I think he came out just fine. Just look at him sitting there playing his old song one more time for all the lovers, for all the dreamers, and hopefully for me and you. From the lily pads on Earth to the twinkling stars far out in the universe, our next character representing Cyan is Rosalina, who I have to admit I don't actually really care all that much for. Look, pretty much every Mario character is an icon in and of themselves. This is the franchise that dug video games out of the video game crash of the 80s and made home console gaming the thing we understand it to be now. And that goes for the princesses too. There would have been no Donkey Kong without Pauline. There would have been no Mario and Bowser rivalry without Peach. And Daisy at least adds a bit of extra spice to the cast whenever she gets to actually show up. She's also my personal favorite because, she's Daisy. But I just don't really care about Rosalina. Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 were perfectly fun games back in the day, and she plays her role in them well enough, but I just find her kinda boring, and I almost never use her in any other Mario games. With that being said, I do actually really like her design. There's something about her dress and overall desaturated colors that makes her almost look like she's wearing a nightgown. And with the way her hair covers one eye, it makes her look like she has permanent bedhead on top of it. I think this works really, really well with the whole children's picture book bedtime story theme she has going for her, and it makes her stand out against the vast black void of space that she makes her home. Giving her the wand and making her so much more magical and powerful than the other princesses also kind of makes her come across as a shout out to the Blue Fairy of Pinocchio fame, or really any kind of fairy godmother you might see in certain fairy tales. I'm not sure how that really fits into Galaxy's themes, but it really does work for her. She might not be my favorite Mario princess by any stretch, again, Daisy, but she's still very striking. And I'm quite happy with the way she turned out for this video. It was about time we added a little bit of feminine energy anyway. But now it's time to get a bit more devious, because our candidate for blue is Lancer. Toby Fox. What an explosive success story. Just look how far he got with his quirky little indie game about a decade ago. Now Deltarune chapters 3 and 4 are out, and I still need to play them, so hush. I did play chapters 1 and 2 back when they first came out though, and there's a lot that I admire about them. Lancer and Susie's story in chapter 1 is really well done if you ask me, even if it doesn't do anything all that different or exciting than so many other stories. There's nothing too new about a goofy villain who isn't actually all that evil, or the gruff mean person on the party who learns that making friends is not so bad, sure, but it's just pulled off in such an endearing way. The fact that Lancer does nothing other than make you laugh with his weird antics for more than half the chapter just makes the moment when he suddenly stops being funny hit you like a sack of bricks. Take it for someone who replayed chapter 1 recently. It really works. And you have to appreciate the clever character design. Looking at a spade from a deck of cards and seeing it as eyes and nose and a cartoony skull is actually kind of brilliant, and it gives the game an excuse to give us a Sans equivalent that isn't actually all that similar to him at all. It's striking and it works super well. But I admittedly do not really have much to say about drawing Lancer. He was definitely the easiest one to draw, except maybe Bill, considering he's basically a ball wearing a hood with a couple of spades on it. But I did want to at least give him a bit of a mischievous air, so here he is coming straight out of the color wheel, as if he's hitting right for you to mess with you with some new harebrained and utterly pathetic attempt at being evil. The most fun part was actually his big toothy grin. I love that he has rounded teeth in most art rather than the usual straight lines you'd see on most cartoon skulls. Everything about him except the tip of his hood is a soft curve, and it really just makes him look so damn huggable. What a great character. And speaking of round, fun characters, our next candidate for the color purple is Amethyst. Steven Universe was a wild ride, man. I absolutely loved that show, and I mean, hey, my videos about it were the first time something I made on YouTube did really well and gave me a subscriber surge. So yeah, I have fond memories of this show, let's just say. It's no secret to anyone who knows me that my favorite character is Pearl, and that I drew her a decent amount of times in the past. But of the main gems, there is one character I've never really drawn that much. Namely, Amethyst. I always thought of the gems as representing various female role model and family member archetypes, with Pearl as the mother and teacher and Garnet as the mentor. And following that logic, I think that leaves Amethyst with the role of fun older sister. And I guess that would make Peridot the chaotic younger sister, and Lapis the cool older cousin, and I'm getting so sidetracked. In any case, it's about high time I drew Amethyst, and what better situation to draw her in than chilling out and eating a snack from the big donuts. I find that the most important part of drawing Amethyst is remembering how round she is and getting the hair right. The character design of the gems function very much on utilizing basic shapes. Where Pearl is all triangles and Garnet is all squares, Amethyst is all circles, right down to her nose and her lips, and even some of her attacks when she fights. I knew right away that I wanted her to lean on her little spot in the color wheel, just kind of watching what everyone else is doing and figuring out if she wants to join in on the fun. I don't know if it was entirely on purpose that she ends up looking in Bill Cipher's direction, but I actually think it works. She seems like the type to initially find his antics funny and interesting, until a bit of common sense, probably provided by Pearl, makes her realize there's nothing funny about this guy or the things he does. That actually sounds like a cool crossover episode. And for pink, we get easily our most obscure suggestion. Bimbet the Skunk from Tiny Toon Adventures, How I Spent My Vacation. I'm sure most of you have heard of Tiny Toons, but if you haven't, it's basically Animaniacs before Animaniacs. A hilarious cartoon with humor for all ages that happen to be watching, featuring younger characters being taught how to be toons by the classic Looney Tunes gang at their school. Yeah, it might not have been as big as Animaniacs, but it was big enough to recently get a reboot that I actually thought was pretty good. Anyway, in the 90s, the show got a direct-to-video movie called How I Spent My Vacation, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's basically Looney Tunes doing National Lampoon. If you can find it, I suggest giving it a watch. It's pretty good. Fifi's storyline in this movie is simple. She meets her favorite actor, Johnny Pugh, and spends all day trying to get him to sign a photo she has of him. And of course, he takes advantage of this to get her to do everything he wants and keeps refusing to do so until the second a more buxom skunk appears, at which point he snatches Fifi's photo, signs it, and gives it to her instead, thus teaching Fifi that not everyone she sets her eyes on are going to be worth pursuing. And also that a fully grown Hollywood actor who strings along a 14 or so year old fan all day probably doesn't have anyone's best interest at heart. Yeah, just throwing that out there. Well, that and that she probably shouldn't have spent the first half of her story outright stalking him to begin with, but whatever, it's a silly cartoon. Bimbet, as she's called, is really just a character who exists solely for a gag that lasts like 5 seconds, but she's become popular enough to get a little bit of a fandom and get the occasional cameo appearance. Can't imagine why. One thing I do find very fun about Bimbet is that, all things considered, she doesn't really do anything wrong. Her name, her Jessica Rabbit-esque design, and the way these situations were often written in the 90s would make it so easy to paint her as a totally vapid, mean, pretty girl bimbo who barges in to steal Fifi's thunder, but that's not really what happens. She just arrives, notices an actress she likes, asks for an autograph, and leaves. I mean, yeah, she flirts with him a bit while she does it, but that's not really that big of a deal. The way I see it, it makes her come across as more of a joke at Johnny's expense than at her own, and I kinda like that. In either case, she actually was genuinely fun to draw. Her hair did turn out to be a bit of a challenge as I was trying to find the perfect height and poof to it to make it work. But as far as essentially an older, more developed Fifi goes, I do think they nailed this design. And she's a perfect choice for the color pink. Alright, we have one color left. Who will step in and represent the color red?
Super Teen Extraordinaire, Freakazoid, Freakazoid.
Freakazoid, baby! Oh man, how I love this show. You wouldn't think it from how fondly people remember and still quote this show, but it was actually one of the shortest to come out of the Spielberg Warner Bros. Era of cartoons, lasting a measly 2-season run of 13 episodes each. But if you ask me, this superhero parody show about a kid who basically becomes the internet personified just hit the nail on the head when it comes to the kind of humor that would become, and still is, prevalent online. Complete wackiness, obscure references, jokes about common tropes in media, and what have you. So it's high time I finally drew the guy. I mean, he's basically the mascot for half my sense of humor anyway. Freakazoid is basically a Looney Tunes character functioning in a more Bruce Timm-esque world, and if I'm not mistaken, Tim did do some character designs on the show, and as such he is very expressive, so I probably could have gone wackier than I did. But I noticed he has a tendency to do a little salute after certain punchlines, and I wanted him to not block other characters too much, so that's what I ended up drawing. I've always loved his design, by the way. It somehow manages to be a perfect mix of genuity and parody. I think one of the strengths of Freakazoid as a character and as a show is that, with minimal tweaking, he would actually work perfectly well as a real superhero, if one with a strange sense of humor. Most of his enemies wouldn't be out of place in a more straight-faced comic book, and I always prefer that in my superhero parodies. It's the same thing that makes Darkwing Duck work as well as it does. I'm much more inclined to find characters like Cobra Queen or Longhorn funny than some forced parody character with a name along the lines of the Crimson Chin or whatever else people come up with when they think they're being clever. Much like with Bimbed, the hair is the big challenge here. How much is too much? How little is too little? It's a hard balance to strike, but I like to think I got to a pretty decent point with this one. And in any case, boy, what a goofy bunch we got here. Frogs, alien rocks, superheroes, space goddesses, and chaos gods. There's a little bit for everyone here, and I had a blast with it. And that's the end of the color wheel. What do you think? Which drawing did you like the best? What character would you have liked to see in which color spot? Tell me all about it in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel while you're down there. That way, you'll be the first one to know whenever I put up a new art video. I'll see you in that one, folks. Bye for now.